for NASA and the world to have not just an internet that is part of the Earth, but also an internet that goes all the way out there. I don't know if it'll get all the way out to the deep space field, because it'll take 13 billion years to get there, but it'll get pretty far. So by standardizing the protocols, by standardizing the ways in which things talk to each other, by making sure that when you have multiple vendors, multiple contractors, they're using a common substrate of communication and extensibility, you have a much, much greater chance of creating an opportunity like the ones I'm describing on the internet, where this platform, this very interesting thing that was designed for one thing, is in fact now even more valuable, even more powerful, rather than mission limited in one way or the other. So the technology-based case continues, and I think it's pretty interesting. What does it look like in 10 years? Processors in phones and computers 100 times more powerful, storage 1,000 times cheaper, a ubiquitous wireless broadband, a cell phone for everyone who wants them in the world. This will occur in our lifetimes, especially since I'm leaving, remember, to 84. How can NASA take advantage of this? I'll give you another example. So something fun. NORAD has a program where Santa, they know where Santa lives, and they track Santa as he goes around the world. And these guys are pretty clever. So they shot videos of Santa visiting various cities and towns around the world. And they had a route GPS as you could track it. I thought, wow, pretty interesting. How many people look at this? 10 million people had nothing else to do, right, but to follow Santa as he wandered the world visiting and spreading joy around the world. Had a big impact on families and kids. How can NASA take advantage of that? To me, that's the interesting question. There's a story about Alan Bean, one of the most famous astronauts, that there's a benefit to being an astronaut. Obviously, get lost in space. No. The benefit is that you can get the attention of any kid for 5 minutes in rapt attention. If we can't use that observation to further the mission of NASA and the things that we care about, we're not doing our jobs right. In many ways, Google and NASA are that they're based on optimism. Pete Worden, who's my good friend, one of the directors at NASA, says that remember that space is hard. It's really hard. It's hard science. It takes an optimist to want to pull all this off, and I like that a lot. You have to be optimistic to want to send a man to the moon, to Mars, to explore every planet, to build a space station. You also have to be optimistic to believe that you can cover all the world's information, starting with borrowed servers in your Stanford dorm room. It's the same principle, and indeed, we're busy doing it as best we can. Ed Lu, who's a Google employee, and I think the U.S. astronaut has been in space the longest, I asked him sort of, what's it like? What did you do all day? He said, I looked at the Earth. I literally just loved to look at the Earth as it was underneath me. So what I was thinking about was, how can we get that? How can we get that feeling? Because if you think about it, every person that I know of basically looks at the world on their cell phone now, right? How can we get that same passion that Ed had, that same feeling about the world around them, the sense of wonderment? They spent today people spend literally so much time looking at this screen or the other choices as well. How can we get that information? And I think that is our joint mission. How do we get this amazing amount of information that is being generated about the world and science and the things that can, how can we get that so that it is at the same level of rapt attention as Ed had sitting, spinning around, right? Looking at the wonderment that is the world around us. That's why I'm such a strong supporter of NASA. That's why Google is such a strong partner for NASA. And that's why we're so very, very happy to wish NASA a great 50th anniversary. So thank you very much. I'm interested in your questions and comments. We have our first question in the middle.
David Locke, U.S. Chamber of Commerce,
Yeah, let's see if we can get the, I think the lady has a mic for you. That'd be great if you could, that way they could hear you on the videotape.
David Logston, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Space Enterprise Council.
Thanks, David.
A few years ago, the futurist Alvin Toffler was at a conference, a space-related conference, where he mentioned that the information age was the third wave, that space was the fourth wave. In your mind, what do you consider the fifth wave? Is it a combination of space-related activities and applications coupled with information? What is your vision for the fifth wave? And with that vision, how can that be a stimulus for the economy?
Most people that I talk to in this area actually believe that the next huge phenomenon that's going to hit us will be in biology, in biotechnology, the issues and opportunities that the genome, recombinant DNA, those sorts of things do. I think all of us are, to some degree, enablers of that next wave. And the argument is pretty simple. In order to do the kinds of things that we want to be able to do for health, society as a whole, improving a lot of the world, we're going to need the kind of information and computing power and networks and learning that's going on today in the other waves that you described. It's probable that the combination of the creation of this enormous information network that I talked about earlier, the commercialization of space, which the NASA leadership has done a tremendous job moving forward. If you think about 10 years ago versus now, again, which also creates a large number of jobs, a large number of opportunities, and this openness, right, making it possible for people to enter the system at the appropriate things. Both of those create very large numbers of jobs and probably a significant wealth opportunity for investors. A lot of people believe that as more and more of this stuff is done in the private sector, people will figure out a way to make money because there's economic value. In Google's case, for example, these satellite images that we showed you, we buy them from commercial satellite providers. They're making money and doing a great job for us, by the way. There are many, many new things of that type that can be done. So one of the reasons I'm here is to say to you all that there are tremendous private opportunities for investment in space technology, high technology, and information technology. Google is an example of it. There will be many others. Eventually, I think all of us will be subsumed to some degree under this biology and biotech because the promise is so strong. They're not quite there yet because the computers aren't quite fast enough. We don't really quite understand the networks quite well, but everybody's working on it. Yes, sir. Let's see if we can get a microphone.
Matt O'Connell, DOI, one of those commercial satellite operators. We get criticized for taking...
And a partner. Thank you. Thank you for all those nice pictures.
Thank you. We get criticized for taking pictures of areas that some people think are sensitive. And I know that Google, there's been a debate about whether or not you should show those pictures. I think the arguments in favor of openness are winning, but I'd love to hear your comments because I get it all around the world.
From a Google perspective, this question about public information, what's public, what's private, is turning into be one of the sort of central questions for the internet. And you all should know that there's a law that restricts, you certainly know this, commercial satellite imagery to a certain level of resolution, which we're governed by, and we meet that, obviously. So there, in fact, is some legislation and some regulation in this area. We've taken a position that's subject to meeting the law, and there are certain countries which have special terms which are even more restrictive with respect to commercial imagery. We want to get as close to that as we can because we think the society benefits from such pictures. The fact